Hi, this is Mr. Wolfson, and in this video we're going to go over the testing section of the Common App tab in your Common Application account. Now, before we get started with this, I do want to mention that this section, along with all of the other sections, can be edited once you've submitted an application to one college. You can edit it in between submissions. You just simply can't edit your submission that's already been sent to a college. So for instance, if you submit on November 1st for a school that you're applying early to, and then you take an SAT in November, get your scores back, you can go back into the Common Application and add your new scores and then submit to another college. So we're going to roll through this and so you can see how everything gets entered in. So the first thing is, are you going to be submitting scores through the Common Application, or reporting scores actually through the Common Application? Go ahead and click yes if you're going to. Next, you'll enter in the exams that you've already taken or the exams that you're planning on taking. So for instance, you can select the ACT, you can select the SAT. If you're taking the regular SAT, you're going to want to select the March 2016 or after. Make sure you select that one. You can put in SAT subject tests. If you've taken any AP exams or going to take any AP exams, you'll select AP subject tests. And then if you're an international applicant, you can answer this. You need to answer this question, but if you're going to be staying in the United States, you don't have to answer this question. Now, after you've added those different test sections, it's going to give you your categories for the different tests. So for instance, an ACT, if you open that up, it'll ask you how many times you've taken the ACT and how many scores you wish to report. Let's say we're going to report one score. And then it'll ask you about if you took the writing test, how many future ACTs you're going to be taking, and then it'll ask you what your highest scores were for each of the sections and when you took that. If you took the exam more than one time, if we change that to 2, the number of questions are not going to be any different. You're still going to report your highest section scores. You just want to make sure that you put in the testing date appropriately. Now we'll scroll down to the SAT. And let's say on this one you haven't taken the SAT yet and you're planning on taking it this fall. If you select that you're going to be taking one SAT coming up, it'll simply ask you when you're going to be taking that exam. It works the same way for the ACT if you put in future tests. Now for AP subject tests, again, it'll ask you how many exams you are planning on taking or including in your application. And it'll ask you when you took it or when you're planning on taking it. Your score is going to be optional because it allows you to put in the subject that you've taken or taking even if it is coming up later on in the school year. Now, the last thing to point out in this section is that many of you may be applying to test optional schools and may choose not to report your SAT or your ACT scores to the colleges. Now, when you are submitting your SAT scores officially from College Board, for instance, you can always omit sending those scores to schools that are optional. But on the Common Application, you may have some schools you're applying to that are requiring that you submit your SAT scores. So you want to make sure that when you submit your scores to those optional schools, if you've answered the questions in this section, you go back to Tests Taken, click Edit, and report that you would not like to include any SAT, ACT scores if you are applying to an optional school that you would prefer not see any of your scores. This goes back to what I said at the beginning of this video about editing this section after you've applied to specific schools so that your application can look slightly different for new schools that you're applying to. So please keep that in mind, especially if you're going to be applying to any optional schools for tests.